always a pleasure as division director to be able to hire new faculty. Eric has been on the job now for a few months. Yeah, he came a little bit before the dean, so Eric's kind of nutrition extension specialist, so primary appointment extension is a small appointment research. He joined us, he's a native of New Mexico, where they measure stocking rate in cows per section, and joined us from West Texas A&M, Canyon, Texas. So again, been here about 90 days. We're taking over responsibilities that Justin Sexton had over past years. And we are very pleased to have Eric on faculty and have that slot filled.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Anderson. And I thank you all for your attention and being here this afternoon. I know this unexpected 90-degree weather in late September has got me sweating like a hamster's been running on his wheel for 30 minutes or so. But what I'm here to talk about, even despite the discussion or despite the heat, is I'm here to talk to you all tonight about getting ready for winter, specifically winter cow nutrition. And really the point of my talk tonight is going to be around finding alternative feedstuffs that will help to offset some of the winter cow feeding costs. And how I want to start that off is with a little saying that I heard quite a bit growing up, and that's that it's easier to count your winnings than it is to balance your checkbook. So, it's much easier for us in the beef industry to measure our outputs than it is for us to keep track of our expenses. Right? So we take our calves, we wean the calves off the cows, we put them on the trailer, we send it to the sale barn, we get a receipt from the auction market for whatever they sold it for. We know what they weighed, we know what they brought, we have an accounting of their revenue. But in terms of managing expenses, that's oftentimes something that has to be kept track. You have to keep track of multiple things. You got to keep track of pasture costs. If you own the ground, are you going to charge it a rent price, an opportunity cost? Dr. Brown, I'm not trying to steal your thunder here, but you have to keep track of hay that you feed. You have to keep track of supplements. You got to keep track of mineral. There's a number of expenses that have to be accounted for that oftentimes we may or may not keep as close track of as what our calves brought at the sale barn. But tonight, what I'm going to talk about, what I really want to bring some focus on, are alternative feedstuffs that we would have available to us that may or may not be cost effective. Now understand that my recommendations and what I'm talking about tonight may not fit in every operation, but what I'm hoping to do is through the process y'all see kind of how I'm thinking about this and maybe how you can apply it to your scenario. So the number one feed resource that I've been asking questions about in Missouri and have been seeing lots of in the time that I've been traveling across the state trying to get to know our regional specialists, get to come visit some of these extension or some of these research farms, has been crop residues, specifically corn residues. I have, on my way up here with Dr. Decker this morning, noticed that there were a number of fields between here and Columbia where they're already combining early corn. And there's residue that is left behind. That residue represents a viable, relatively cost-effective feedstuff for beef cows. Now, the first place we got to think about where this might or might not fit is in terms of what your calving season is. So to do that, you got to understand what the crop residue nutritional composition is. That crop residue is going to be in the mid-50s TDN wise, and it's also going to provide in the mid-5 to low 6% crude protein. That nutritional value is sufficient to maintain or to put weight on a mature beef cow that has weaned a calf and is in the mid-gestation phase of pregnancy. That feed resource is not necessarily going to be a panacea to put 3 pounds a day on calves that you're trying to background. It's also not the feed resource that you want to try and get your cows, your fall calving cows, through peak lactation and then the breeding season. However, though, just because the quality is average to marginal doesn't mean that it's not worth using. There's been quite a bit of work done in other states looking at the viability of this as a feed resource for beef cattle, including from an economic standpoint, pricing, from an animal performance, from the agronomic standpoint, its impact on subsequent crop yields. And the results of a couple of decades of study are quite promising. My review of the literature in preparing for this talk found that the rental rate for corn stalks was in the rate for 2016 was in the range of $8 an acre to $15 an acre. $15 an acre was the maximum, and that's what I want to use for this example, because here's the important part that I want to talk about. How much feed am I going to get for that $15 an acre? That's the important thing, because we need to be able to make an apples-to-apples comparison between some of our other winter feeding alternatives. Now, our other winter feeding alternatives in this part of the world might be stockpiling season forages. They also might be, as our forage resource base dwindles, to end the cows up or begin feeding hay, or to begin feeding hay out of pasture. Now, we might still be a little bit early for feeding hay, but I just want to put this on your minds, because now is the time for you to be making these decisions and thinking about this winter nutrition program. It's better to be 30 days early than 30 days late and trying to figure out how you're going to feed your cows. Okay, so the general recommendation is that for every 100 bushels of corn, you get about 30 days of grazing per cow from your cornfield. So historically, what you're going to hear that as is you're going to hear that stocking rate as being somewhere around an acre per cow per month. Those recommendations will range anywhere from 1 acre per cow per month to 2 acres per cow over about a 60 to 75 day grazing period. Now, that forage quality and that time frame is going to be sufficient for that cow to maintain body condition, to possibly gain in the neighborhood of about half a pound to 1 pound a day as well. However, if you extend out beyond that, the one issue that you're going to run into is not necessarily forage quantity, but it's going to be in terms of forage quality. So when you think about a corn residue or crop residue field, let's take corn for example, there are going to be several parts of the corn plant that are left behind. With modern technology, we're going to only see about 1% yield loss, so that's going to be grain that's left behind, not picked up by the combine and harvested. That'll be one component. The two most nutritious components that are left behind by the combine, though, for that beef cow are the leaf and the husk. And that's where the majority of the feeding value from the corn stalks are going to occur, or going to come from. Now, the cob and the stalk itself are going to be the lesser nutritious parts, and typically what's going to happen is when you're stalking corn, or when you're putting cows, running cows on corn stalks, your goal is to get them to eat the grain that was left behind, the leaf, the husk. And ideally not leave them out there long enough to where they feel hungry enough to go out and eat cob and the stalk, it's the actual stalk itself. So to work that math now, if we give a cow an acre and that gets us 30 days of grazing, if you use the animal unit equivalent system, a cow's gonna need about 780 pounds of forage a month. That 780 pounds of forage, if you divide $15 an acre, which is your rental price, that's the maximum rental price, by that 780, you come up with 1.9 cents per pound, or about $38 a ton. Okay, so that is the relative cost of the feed that you would get from corn stock, an acre of corn stalks. in terms of an alternative feed like hay, I got on the Missouri Hay Report on the USDA Ag Marketing Service website this morning and found that marginal or fair to good quality fescue hay was bringing about $30 a bale, and those bales weighed about $1,200 a ton. So that $1,200 or that $30 per 1,200 pounds is going to equate out to about $50 a ton. Now, at that point, you're looking at 38 versus 50 in terms of price, but that's not the whole story from two sides. One is, what is the first thing that when a lot of ground went back into crop production a few years ago because of astronomical corn prices, what did they tear out as well? Fences. Fences is exactly right. And so you're going to have some fencing, you're going to have some labor, you're going to have some water requirements. That is probably going to eat up a good bit of that margin. But I'm here to tell y'all, though, as well, that you got to think about, hey, you got to, if you're going to discount the corn stalks, you've got to discount the hay. We are unrolling or unveiling a hay production school across the state of Missouri over this winter and into 2018. This was a group effort by a team of regional livestock specialists and faculty here at the University of Missouri, where we're going to cover all aspects of hay production, feeding, management, storage, economics, etc., etc. And here's what what I think is really important. If you are a producer who produces, raises, and then feeds your own hay, the losses expected throughout that whole process are approximately 30%. That's forage that, if everything goes right, or 30% of that hay is going to be lost and actually not make it into the animal. Now, our data from the hay school would suggest that it losses of up to 70% through the production, curing, baling, storage, feeding process are very possible as well. And so you've got to think about that from that aspect. And $50 a ton of hay is not necessarily a ton of hay. $50 a ton might only buy you 1,400 pounds of hay, best case scenario, which would be what the 30% loss would be. Now, if in a worst case scenario that you lose over 50%, say 70% is actually 1,400, and so then that $50 a ton only bought you 600 pounds of hay. We have a lot of opportunity for improvement in terms of utilization of our strongest resource base in Missouri, which is forage, through improved management of our forages, but also through the use of some of these underutilized feedstuffs like the crop residues. Now, if other states have gotten on the bandwagon and have started to use these crop residues extensively, I would encourage you all to consider it as well. Now, I will caution that the crop residues in the grazing can cause some concerns with compaction in a no-till system, farming system. And so that is the one area that research has shown that the compaction issues are a real concern. In a conventional tillage system, I believe a 5-year study out of the University of Nebraska showed that there was no differences in subsequent crop yields after grazing these crop residues. So overall, my main message, like I said, is that we need to better utilize our strongest resource, which is our forages. We need to seek out and utilize some of these alternative forages because of their potential to be a cost-effective replacement, to help us balance our checkbook, to help us control some of our input costs. I feel that as beef producers, especially in the cow-calf sector, our number one area that we can focus on and improve are managing our input costs. Now, there's a method to that madness. The method to that madness is simply that if we sell calves into the feeder calf system, we are participating in commodity beef production. Commodity beef production, we are price takers. We're not price setters, which means that by being price takers, we have to take whatever price the market will bear. We don't get to set the market for our calf as much as we would sure like to. I know I would. We can control to a certain extent what they weigh when we take it to market, but we can't control the price per pound by and large. And so what I propose is that there's essentially a ceiling in terms of your potential revenue, and that to increase margin, the difference between output and input is simply going to take tighter control of your input costs. And that's where my whole philosophy and a lot of my extension programming is going to be geared towards. It's going to be simply to controlling those input costs, to figuring out new ways to better use what we've got. So that's all about all I've got. I'd be more than happy to take any questions. I don't want to keep you all too terribly long. I think I am up against the best speaker of the night, which would be supper. So, fire away. Dr. Anderson. Okay, so Dr. Lamberson's question was, what about the alternatives to letting the cows graze the corn stalks? And that would be to bale them and then to haul the hay to the animal, basically, as opposed to feeding, or letting the animal graze it. So I've got two answers to that. Number one is that I have some concerns with the amount of inputs that we would have into the process of harvesting the stalk bales and then taking them to the animals in terms of diesel, in terms of iron, equipment, et cetera, in terms of increasing the price. But the most important concern in that case revolves around the quality of the diet that the animal gets to consume. One of the beautiful things about ruminants is that if you allow them to, in a grazing scenario, it's been my experience that despite what the textbooks say, in terms of this is the forage quality of this feed stuff at this time of year, cows don't read the book. By putting them out there and allowing them to graze, we allow them to be selective in terms of that grain, that leaf, that husk, and just to not graze the cob and the stalk itself. When we bale it and put the bales out to feed, we have a larger influence on their diet quality, and a lot of times their diet quality is tremendously lower when we feed them the stalk bales relative to letting them go out and get them on their own. When we turn the cows out and let them graze, even if we graze them for approximately a cow per acre per month, we're only going to have an 18 to 22% utilization of the total forage mass that's out there. So that's leaving a lot of residue behind. So we've allowed them to have a selectivity to select maximum diet quality, which should allow them, to meet their nutrient requirements with less input. So, sorry that was a 5-minute answer to a 5-second question, but I'm kind of prone to those. So. Okay, so question in the back here is supplement needed for corn stalks. That first 30 days, if you graze them out there and they have access to corn grain on the ground, no supplement is required. As long as you see grain in the manure, there's no need for supplement. The diet that they're selecting will be adequate to meet their nutrient requirements. One of the important things, and I appreciate you bringing up that point, sir, is that in a spring calving herd, after weaning, that is the time of year when you can feed cows the bovine equivalent of ramen noodles and get them to perform. Their nutrient requirements are at their absolute minimum during that time of year. It is amazing how low quality of feeds we can put in front of them and still have them maintain productivity, and even put on some flesh going into the winter. So, but to go back to answer the question, if the animals are out there for longer than a month, typically what we're going to see the limited nutrient be is not energy, it's going to be protein. And so, in that case, my recommendation is somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 pound of protein per cow per day. So, a good example of that would be to feed about 1 pound of distiller's grain, since distiller's is approximately 38% protein. That would be your supplement requirement. And you'd be feeding them for protein, not necessarily for energy. Question? Okay, so question in the back is that, has there been any studies done on backgrounding calves on corn stalks? There has been some work done on backgrounding calves. The concern with the backgrounding calves is that a lot of the value in backgrounding calves is from weight gain that you're going to get. If there's a lot of corn grain on the ground, there's some potential energy available to those calves to gain, but this feed stuff is not necessarily going, without significant supplement, it's not going to provide them adequate nutrition to grow at a rate that's going to basically make backgrounding pay for you. Because really the value in backgrounding and or even preconditioning on the range of origin most times does not come from the premium that's generated by the auction market, because that's typically only between $5 and $12 a hundredweight. The real value in a backgrounding or preconditioning program typically is going to come from the added pounds of beef that you're going to put on. And so, my recommendation in that case is to put them in a situation where you're going to get, 2 to 3 pounds of the average daily gain. Backgrounded calves out on corn stalks are going to do anywhere between about 3/4 pound and a pound and a quarter a day, unless without significant supplementation. Now, if you had the resources to go out and put supplement out to them, there's certainly some opportunity there. Okay, so great question. Question down here in the front was, are there concerns with nitrate toxicity in corn stalk grazing like this? My answer to that is, as long as they are eating only the leaf and husk, there's not a lot of nitrate concern. The majority of nitrate buildup is going to be in the bottom 2 foot of the corn stalk or the corn plant. And so that acre per cow per month, you're not going to get to a point where they're going to be consuming significant stock. Now, that is a potential concern, would be nitrate toxicity if you expected to leave those cows out there all winter long and not rotate them and not put them on fresh stocks. But in the case where we're getting 30 days and then we're rotating into some new stocks, or we have given them more acreage per cow to sort of, we've stocked it more conservatively, nitrate's not going to be a major concern, but that would be the number one concern if they were out there for a long time. Okay, so question down here in the front is, could I drill a small grain now and then graze stalks over the winter? I think that's a great question, as long as you give the small grain an opportunity to establish itself and get to be 4 to 6 inches tall before the animal is turned loose. Now, what I suspect will happen in that case is that they're probably going to graze the young, luscious new growth preferentially at first, and that's probably going to put pressure on its ability to perform, and they're going to leave that stock behind until that's the last thing left to feed out there. So it's a great question, and it's certainly a concern, but we probably need to let those plants put some roots down and be more viable before we turn those cattle out on it. Okay, so question was, are cover crops a viable resource for beef cattle, specifically turnips? That has been an area of multi-purpose use of farmland that has been quite popular here recently and has been very successful. Now, in the scenario where the gentleman asked about backgrounding calves, I have seen quite a bit of work backgrounding calves on cover crops, specifically some mix of turnips, radishes, other winter annuals like that. That's another scenario where you could have some potential to put the weight gains desired. I've seen some data out of Kansas where they had nearly 3 pound a day average daily gain on a mix of cover crops that included turnips, a winter annual grass, and I can't remember what the third one was. It was a bean of some kind. So. Well, if there's no more questions, I hope the cooks have supper ready. So.
Thanks, Eric. And the thing I'd say is, in terms of our beef extension group, we're really happy to have Eric here. You can tell by the number of questions, that's by far and away probably one of the areas that most questions come in from. And so we were really hurting there for a while where we didn't have a nutritionist in the group. And so Jared and I are both really thrilled that he's here. I just got some quick instructions for dinner. So as you